On the edge of a quiet riverside town, where wooden docks stretched into sloped shimmering waters, stood a shoemaker's shop so small it could barely fit an old wooden chair and a scarred workbench. The shop belonged to Mr. Harris, a man in his 60s with a wiry frame, calloused hands, and eyes that carried the calm patience of someone who had weathered many seasons. He lived alone in a modest room behind the shop, rising early each day to polish worn leather and stitch frayed seams with the care of a craftsman who knew every shoe had a story. The town itself moved at an unhurried pace. Fishermen's voices carried across the water at dawn, and shopkeepers along Main Street greeted each other with easy familiarity. The scent of fresh bread from the bakery mingled with the briny breeze drifting in from the river. Every morning, as sunlight broke through the fog, Mr. Harris would swing open the creaky front door of his shop, letting the aroma of oiled leather spill out into the street. Children walked by on their way to school, splashing through puddles left from the night's rain, while ferries rumbled softly at the dock. In this gentle rhythm of life, Mr. Harris's shop wasn't just a place to mend shoes. It was a small, warm corner of the world where quiet acts of kindness happened without any expectation of return. Every morning, after sweeping the wooden floor and arranging his tools in neat rows, Mr. Harris followed a ritual as steady as the river outside. He would choose a pair of worn-out shoes from a small stack in the corner shoes he'd repaired on his own time wipe, away the last traces of dust, and buff the leather until it shone in the morning light. Then he'd place them on a little stool just outside his shop, with a handwritten sign propped beside them. "Free if you need them, they're yours." Some days it was a fisherman's boots that had lost their soles, rescued from the trash and made seaworthy again. Other days it was a pair of sneakers belonging to a single mother whose son had outgrown them, now resized for another child. Mr. Harris kept an eye on the neighborhood kids, especially the ones walking to school in the rain with frayed laces and thin soles. When summer came, he would quietly set out small pairs of shoes, knowing they would vanish by morning, carried off by little feet headed for new adventures. Neighbors sometimes asked why he bothered, especially when his own business barely paid the bills. He would simply smile, the corners of his eyes crinkling. "Someday, I might need a hand myself," he'd say. "Today, I'm just planting the seed." To him, kindness wasn't a favor to be tallied or a gesture to be remembered. It was a habit like unlocking the shop at sunrise or taking a deep breath of the river air. In the same way a good stitch could make worn leather whole again, he believed small acts of generosity could mend the unseen tears in a person's heart. That year, the rains came early. At first it was only a steady drizzle, painting the streets silver and swelling the river by inches. But within weeks, the sky seemed to split open. Day after day, rain hammered the rooftops, and the wind howled against the shuttered windows of the riverside town. People whispered about floods, but most believed the river had always been their friend. One night, long after the shops had closed, the church bell began to toll, warning that the river had broken its banks. Mr. Harris woke to the sound of rushing water and stepped outside to find the street in front of his shop already a fast-moving stream. He hurried to lift his tools onto the highest shelves, stacked customers' shoes on the counter, and wedged the door shut. But the water came too fast, pouring in through the gaps, sweeping across the floor with an unstoppable force. Within the hour, everything was gone: the workbench, the chair, the carefully arranged tools, even the little stool where he had set his free shoes each morning. The shop he had tended for decades was swallowed by muddy water, leaving nothing but splintered boards and ruined leather in its wake. When the flood finally receded, the rest of the town began to recover. Shops reopened, fishermen returned to the docks, and Main Street filled again with voices. But Mr. Harris had no shop to reopen. With no savings to rebuild, he found shelter beneath the overhang of an abandoned warehouse near the docks, sleeping on a worn blanket. Meals came from the kindness of others: a sandwich from a passing stranger, a cup of coffee from the diner down the street. Some mornings, out of sheer habit, he would sit in the doorway of the warehouse, pretending to polish a shoe that wasn't there, his hands moving through the motions as if muscle memory could bring back what he'd lost. And sometimes, with a faint smile, he would imagine placing an invisible pair of shoes outside an invisible shop, holding on to the one thing the flood couldn't take from him: the will to give. One crisp afternoon in late autumn, the river carried a cold wind through the docks, scattering dry leaves along the cobblestones. Mr. Harris sat beneath the warehouse overhang, watching the ferries sway in their berths, his mind adrift. The days had blurred together, quiet, uneventful, marked only by the occasional greeting from a passerby. Then he heard footsteps, slow at first, then purposeful, cutting through the murmur of the river. A tall man in a dark coat approached, the late sun catching a thin scar that traced from his temple to his cheek. He stopped a few feet away, studying Mr. Harris with an intensity that felt almost like recognition. "Are you the shoemaker who used to leave shoes outside for anyone who needed them?" the man asked, his voice low but steady. Mr. Harris blinked, surprised, then nodded. The man's shoulders eased, and he spoke again more softly this time. "When I was a boy, I was barefoot, hungry, and alone. One rainy morning, I saw a pair of shoes outside your shop. I took them, and that was the first kindness I ever knew. I've carried it with me ever since." Without another word, he turned and motioned to a group waiting nearby. Men and women emerged, hauling wooden beams, boxes of supplies, and a freshly painted sign, "Harris Shoe Repair." Right there on the open stretch of cobblestone beside the river, they began to build. The sound of hammers and saws filled the air, mingling with the cries of gulls. By sunset, a new shop stood solid, warm, and even better than the old one. Mr. Harris stood in the doorway, his throat tight. "Why now?" he asked quietly. The man's smile was faint but full of meaning. "Because kindness isn't a debt to be repaid. It's a seed, and today, your seed bloomed." One crisp afternoon in late autumn, the river carried a cold wind through the docks, scattering dry leaves along the cobblestones. Mr. Harris sat beneath the warehouse overhang, watching the ferries sway in their berths, his mind adrift. The days had blurred together, quiet, uneventful, marked only by the occasional greeting from a passerby. Then he heard footsteps, slow at first, then purposeful, cutting through the murmur of the river. A tall man in a dark coat approached, the late sun catching a thin scar that traced from his temple to his cheek. He stopped a few feet away, studying Mr. Harris with an intensity that felt almost like recognition. "Are you the shoemaker who used to leave shoes outside for anyone who needed them?" the man asked, his voice low but steady. Mr. Harris blinked, surprised,